We really are aspiring to be the Web3 powered Roblox. No code, basically anything that you imagine, you should be able to create. If you're launching a token, you can tie that token into your gameplay. You can use that token to fund more games, and it can kind of take a life of its own.
This material is for informational purposes only and is not intended to provide accounting, legal, or tax advice, or investment recommendations, or an official statement of Presto or its affiliates.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Presto Research Podcast. I'm your host, Min, and today I'm joined by my colleague, Peter.
Hello.
And we are very excited to bring our special guest here, CEO of Portals, Adam.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Great to have you here. How are you doing today?
Doing great. How about you guys?
Great. So as usual, let's start with your story. How did you first get into crypto and what inspired you to build the portals?
So I, like a lot of people, first heard about crypto with Bitcoin way back when, I've always been into games and software. Games was really the thing that drove me into a career in programming. That, it was basically growing up with games and Nintendo and all that. I kind of wanted to, make games essentially from pretty early on. It was kind of an obsession. Got into tech that way and heard about Bitcoin 2013, I think. I bought a few Bitcoin, sold them for a loss, and didn't really get back into crypto until about 2020, when I guess it was really that's when I was really starting to dive in. DeFi summer, was starting to get more interested in crypto as a concept, smart contracts, world computers, these things that are kind of just more interesting from an engineering standpoint. I wasn't as into, I guess, the financial aspect and things that Bitcoin was trying to do. That didn't pull me as much as I guess the, what was possible with being able to be your own bank with DeFi and those sorts of things that were pretty interesting. So yeah, it was around 2020 that we really started getting into it. From there, started getting wind of Solana in 2021. I had, I guess, to maybe go back a little bit into I'd kind of been working in the games industry for a while, I ended up getting in more like the business, the holistic side of the games industry when it comes to going to market and bringing a game, out into the world. So that was kind of the early part of my career. I'd always been kind of entrepreneurial, had that itch essentially. So it was 2015 that I started the first company. And that company was actually working with a lot of games and entertainment companies and doing doing marketing and those sorts of things for a lot of entertainment companies. But once those had kind of run their course, essentially, we had built those companies to, work in an industry that we were interested in and excited about, but it wasn't like the true calling necessarily. It was when we had sort of put those businesses on the back burner. They essentially had felt very fortunate to kind of get time freedom from those businesses, where we were able to think about, okay, what is the true calling? What is something that we could be excited to work on every day? Was still, very much into games, playing all kinds of games, toyed around with making games maybe back in, from the very beginning, I was always kind of tinkering, but gave more of a full swing at, maybe making an indie game in, I think that was like 2013, 2014 for the first time. So after those businesses had kind of got put on the back burner, 2020, 2021, we had that time to really think about. And I guess that first concept was, what if you took something like, a Nintendo quality, what would Nintendo do if they were building a metaverse, which at the time, I guess it was, about 2020, not too many people were talking about the metaverse, but we were just seeing that's kind of an interesting concept. And if you brought that to the browser, you could see that being a pretty interesting place? And what if you kind of took these other ideas of a very accessible metaverse where you could, express yourself creatively. We were taking, some inspiration from things like Animal Crossing, which kind of has metaverse elements in a way, in that you can create spaces and villages and visit other people's villages. So those were all things that were sort of part of that inspiration that couldn't stop thinking about that idea. That was like, that sounds really, really, really fun to build and yeah. So that basically couldn't stop thinking about that idea. We were obsessed with it for we tried to put it back on the shelf, and about a year after putting it on the shelf, it was like I was still thinking about it all the time, writing ideas all the time on how to kind of maybe execute it. So ended up deciding 2021, let's just start building it. It actually wasn't conceptualized with the idea of bringing it, to crypto from the very beginning. But it was like, if we just started building this out in the browser where you can, kind of like Animal Crossing, build a room and lay out items and then visit your friend's room. And that was sort of the starting prototype concept. And it, we basically just put caution aside and said, let's just start building it. We'll self-fund it. We'll see where it goes. We'll figure out a way to make this work, just because we were so kind of obsessed with the idea. When I say we, I'm talking about other co-founders that we started the company in 2015 that were working with a lot of these games companies and doing a lot of software in the browser, playing with WebGL. That's sort of where all that sort of coalesced into, okay, this would be something that our team is really good at. We're really excited about this idea. Let's just start building it. But yeah, that was kind of the spark and the starting point. And we eventually saw this sort of buildup of excitement about the metaverse. We had kind of interesting, lucky timing in terms of how that all played out, because we got wind of Solana early 2021, and we saw that there was all of this interest in the metaverse within crypto circles, right? Like crypto was really starting to blow up. NFTs were going crazy. It was becoming more of something that looked like it was going to become mass market. So we had been building something. It just so happened that was like very similar, had a lot of metaverse elements. And then we saw that a lot of strong talent was going to Solana. And we tried Solana and saw right away, like we're very much like product and UX people. So we saw right away there was a huge difference in the user experience between what we had been using, DeFi Summer, Ethereum, and MetaMask versus on Solana, Phantom. It was already 10 times better in a lot of ways. The transaction speeds was like, okay, if there is going to be something mass market, at least we were not super crypto native, at that point, I would say. We hadn't seen other chains and other wallets, we were still pretty fresh, but we did see a big difference, at least between Ethereum. We saw Solana, we saw this big rise of Solana NFTs, and we were like, why don't we bring, portals to Solana? Maybe we can get a grant from Solana, or we saw that Metaplex was doing grants. And essentially from there, they had like, right as we were deliberating, like maybe we can bring this to Solana, maybe we can get a grant. I don't know if they would want something like this, but right as we were deliberating on that, they launched a hackathon. And so we said, let's add Solana components in a way that, makes sense to this prototype that we were building. And so very sort of indie sort of hacker starting story that was really just like a passion project that we just, we're very excited about, but ended up launching an NFT on Solana. After the hackathon, essentially, we ended up winning like second place on their gaming track in that hackathon, and sort of now there was just this huge floodgate of interest to what we were building. Even though it was very early, I think people saw that we were really passionate about it, and we were taking these kind of new ideas, this new spin on the metaverse, and talking about how all these concepts about Nintendo and Apple and Animal Crossing and these different concepts that we were sort of that were part of that MVP, that early version of things. And I think people saw that we were really, really excited about it. Um, and yeah, so the floodgates opened. It was NFT season. We released an NFT. It sold out in seconds, and it was just this totally new world. Like we had been in, building in Silicon Valley and it kind of been in the entertainment world. Uh, and we're from those worlds. So to jump into crypto, I remember after we submitted the hackathon, we were in our Discord. We set up a Discord because that's what you do. And all these geckos and foxes start popping into the Discord. And, we have no idea what's going on. It's all these different avatars. And they're like, when WL, when WL. I didn't even know what WL meant. Um, so we're like, I don't know. We'll do a whitelist. We'll sure. So anyway, it ended up making sense for us to do an NFT and kind of capitalize on all of this interest that was on us. And it was a very, very crazy time. There was a lot of venture capital that was out there. We had venture capitalists after the hackathon reach out to us. And it was really like, wow, this is an awesome opportunity to really make this big. And it kind of happened, overnight. But yeah, we brought in some amazing investors. And that was end of 2021. And we've kind of been heads down building ever since. We've been having a lot of fun. We've kind of gone through one bear market already. But yeah, we've just continued to really, really believe in the vision. And, we've pivoted along the way. We've learned different things about kind of the audiences and what we're building that, is suitable for these different types of audiences, where we kind of have really drilled into this is what this should be for crypto natives. If you're in crypto and you're checking out portals, you should find something that's, pretty interesting, pretty compelling. So yeah, we've adapted to that. We've still kind of kept the wider mass market window very much open, and we're kind of moving into that phase pretty soon, where you can use these tools and you can definitely get games and a lot of cool stuff, a lot of cool content, games and worlds out there to a Web2 audience as well, still powered by crypto. But yeah, so that's where we're at. Hopefully that's kind of not too long of an intro, but that's sort of the story so far.
Yeah, sounds great. Actually, so you mentioned a few Web2 based games as inspiration, like Animal Crossing and Nintendo and so on. But what was it about the Web3 or blockchain based gaming that attracted you the most?
Yeah, so we can talk about this quite a bit, just the journey through kind of our initial perception of what the excitement from audiences might be, what the next, our perception early on was Web3 was very much the next phase of the internet, and it was kind of happening soon. It was going to happen in 2022. Like everybody was going to have a wallet, and this was, almost how it was being branded. And you could see in that world, in that time, that a lot of people were excited about games and the ownership of games, and crypto didn't have as bad of a stigma back then, when there was a lot of new kind of participants coming in and saying like, this could be kind of interesting maybe. So ownership, interoperability, all of those things were very interesting concepts. So like with our NFTs, and you've seen a lot of these things, like even just from a development perspective, let's say you're a Web2 developer and you're looking at something like, I want to build Second Life, which has land and plots of land and a marketplace and all of these things. Do you want to build that from scratch, or do you want to use the blockchain, which already sort of gives you all of those tools to do that? You don't need to create a marketplace from scratch. So just from a few of those perspectives, it was interesting. Obviously, as things kind of evolved, and you saw, there wasn't this mass market onboarding. There was still a lot of grift happening in crypto, a lot of scams. General perception ended up being there's still to this day, a ton of general perception that like we're staying away from crypto. So you have to pivot. You kind of have to restructure your way of thinking of how we're going to build this and iterate and sequence, where crypto folks are going to see this and they're going to be excited, while we didn't ever want to close the window to we know we're building something that could appeal and be really interesting to Web 2 folks. So how do you do that? How do you structure it? How do you sequence things where you can you can get there and have it work? Um, so yeah, and just kind of a part of like the, last few years, we understood, we felt like we were in a pretty good position where we had built the platform out to a point where we could uh, start generating revenue with it and really make sure that we survived no matter what, like as our baseline, because um, we didn't see a lot of that. We didn't see a lot of like who in this industry with crypto games like are building things that are genuinely interesting and sort of have repeatable revenue and aren't doing things that are just sort of kind of flashes in the pan, speculative things, right? Like this is something that's growing year over year. So yeah, that was something that we ended up focusing on early on, and we're glad we did. So yeah.
Can you explain where the revenue part comes from? And also, it would be nice if you could share like what could users actually do in the portals.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess just really quickly, like from the creator's perspective, if you create an account in portals, from a high level now, as we're describing portals, we really are aspiring to be the Web3 powered Roblox, and the no code, basically anything that you imagine, you should be able to create. So we've had a lot of people that have never even thought about making a game, but maybe they've had a game idea before. Um, we happened to kind of early on attract with the crypto audience, people that just had a lot of fun with the creativity side of things, where even in the very early version, they were doing creative things with whatever furniture items were available in kind of the rooms that were available, right? Like, so we had these very early this concept of rooms that you can decorate and that sort of thing. So it's kind of like The Sims in a way. And people were turning them into Satoshi's bar, all kinds of like really cool creative stuff that we never would have expected. And that was really our first signal that we were, there's something here that people are latching onto, and they're spending a ton of time tuning and just exploring their creativity and making new spaces. So that was the start of it. And we sort of just iterated and iterated and iterated to the point where we got to, we, as our initial concept of like a, user-friendly metaverse, we always wanted it to be no code, so that you don't need to learn how to code. You can create games eventually with a no-code engine. So as of now, when you go in, you can kind of create a space, and there's still a lot of stuff that we're doing in terms of like tutorials and onboarding. Part of the reason that we haven't prioritized that is just we feel like the market for Web 2 folks to jump in here and create stuff is just a lot wider. So once we get to that point, we'll start to prioritize more of that. But there are a lot of documentation that will get you set up, and there's kind of tutorial videos. But you can just spin up the space, and this all runs in the browser. You can click edit, and since this is just a website, you can send a link to anybody, and then they can hop in, and then there's voice chat and regular chat. So yeah, with the items, you can just start laying stuff out. You can place images, you can have videos play, just using the building block for kind of a simple demonstration. You have NPCs, but you can use any 3D model that you find online. We also have, now we have AI 3D generated models, which we can show a little bit later. It's not live yet, but a lot of the builders are already using those tools, and we're integrating those tools where you can just say like, I want a skeleton character with a blue sword, and it'll just appear. So you can set walking paths for enemies. You can enable combat. If you wanted to create a, let's say maybe just a simple level in the sense that like a side scrolling level or a platforming level, you can enable things like ledge grab, But it all sort of happens just with these, these simple settings. If you want to set it, to night mode, it's all just really uh, super, super user-friendly environment for doing that. So to switch to night, you can do that. So these are, there's a bunch of different templates and environments that you can start out with. But you can turn this into a full-on game. You can read the documentation, you can watch some tutorials, and if you have an idea for a game, we want it to be, the easiest, fastest place to do that. So even in the Web 2 world, if you're comparing this to something like Roblox or Fortnite, there's a lot of things that are unique about portals that don't exist anywhere else. In that sense of, there's a visual editor to create your game world, your games essentially. So you can do multiple levels and you can do all kinds of stuff. So that's a quick, just very, very surface level, quick example of kind of some of the tools on the creator side. And then I can show you what this was something that we showed recently. We did our first game jam. And that's where, we can talk about where the crypto pieces come in for that. But essentially there was a token that launched that we're using as a demonstration of the sort of the power of internet capital markets and being able to launch a token to create a community, to fund things, and do all kinds of stuff.
That's actually one of the questions that I had. If you look at Pump.Fun, streamers are launching tokens. If you look at Zora, there's like a creator token. So how do you view this like phenomena, and like what's your take on this?
Yeah, I think it's extremely powerful. I think it's a very sort of still underestimated powerful thing. We're starting to see this sort of happening organically, just as so I'll give you an example. So there was a token that within the community, basically the first token that launched within portals called Chrono around a game that essentially you play this game. It was kind of more of an idle crypto native focused game where you're buying the Chrono token, you're fighting fleets against other people that are also using their Chrono tokens to upgrade their fleets. The tokens were initially airdropped to portals, NFT holders, Solana communities. They claim their Chrono and they can kind of go to battle. So that was the setup. What we were trying to convey and show an example of and kind of, push the DAO in this direction was, now that you have a token, you have a treasury, you have people spending tokens that are going back into the treasury to play this game. There's a lot of flexibility with what you can do with that. So how about doing a game jam where that Chrono token is given out as the prize pool? And I could show some of that. But if you follow the portal's Twitter, you will see some of those examples here. So just really cool explosion of creativity, lots of games, lots of submissions, everybody competing for on different tracks to win the Chrono tokens, essentially. So that token launched within portals, and we are really bullish on that setup where like Zora, like Virtuals, there are a lot of creator tools within portals. So if you're launching a token, you can tie that token into your gameplay. You can use that token to fund more games. And it can kind of take a life of its own. You build a DAO around that token, and we're already seeing this. So Chrono, for example, the DAO just passed a proposal to create a trading floor in portals where you can trade X stocks. So Apple, Tesla. So it'll probably be, a degen crazy trading floor. But half of the fees from that trading floor will go to the Chrono DAO. So we really believe in the power of internet capital markets, powerful creator tools that allow you to launch tokens and use them in these really powerful ways where you can fund things, you can tie them into gameplay if you want, or even some of the experiments and kind of getting into the Web 2 side of things and how we're situating there is we've always thought this idea of hotly debated topic still. But like we very much believe that there are awesome games that can be geared towards crypto natives, and you can build businesses off of that. And kind of that's where we had been focusing. It's like we're releasing games all the time. People are paying fees to enter those games. They're getting wearables as part of their admission fee and things like that, where you can, if you're putting out compelling content, you understand crypto natives, you can create stuff that they'll come back to and they'll spend money on. Um, and yeah, there's probably going to be some speculative elements, but not, it doesn't have to be the whole draw. We were situating things when it comes to the content that we're putting out for crypto natives in a way that somebody might be spending money, they might not have won anything, but they still had a lot of fun and they want to come back and spend money, the next month. So it's a little tangent on kind of crypto native audiences. But like one of the other ways that we're using the upcoming Portals token and really leaning into this internet capital markets thing is taking Portals tokens and funding games designed for Web 2 audiences. So we just announced that we're partnered with a Thrive protocol. They've worked with a lot of great L1s, L2s like Arbitron, Optimism, and it's basically a funding protocol that's milestone based, and only tokens are going to people that are really shipping and creating really cool things, creating value. So taking that model, taking Portals tokens and being able to look for game studios, whether they're building currently in Roblox. We are looking for a lot of, Web 2 studios, Web 2, Roblox studios, people that have won game jams that are maybe indie developers, and saying, here's some ideas that we have that we think could be hit games in the Web 2 world that could even be released on Steam as standalone games and, powered by the Portals engine, but that can potentially get a really good return on investment. So, you're using the Portals tokens, but ultimately you're shooting for these specific titles that we think, and, we've seen we're pretty up to speed in what works in the games industry, and when there's sort of a new trend like we're seeing with so yeah, there's some specific types of games and genres that we're looking at funding and could release as specific standalone games released on Steam that end up just powered by the crypto, by the token and internet capital markets, but don't necessarily have Web3 components within the game, or if they do, they would be completely invisible to the user. And I think that's, where a lot of the Web3 games industry has kind of gone. Or at least that's one thesis. That's one way of doing it. You could either kind of focus on crypto natives, or you can we're going to go Web 2. All the crypto stuff is behind the scenes and kind of optional, sort of, the off the grid model.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about so you're a little bit more about your user base. So I think you've seen some impressive user growth numbers recently. Where do you think the most of this growth is coming from? Is it more like a Web 2 based, user base, or the more crypto native? Is there a way to distinguish that, or?
Yeah, so it's still very much crypto native. We do believe you could still build Portals into something pretty big, even if we were just 100% crypto native. You can look at things like one of the comparisons that we've been making is actually Second Life, where it's 20 years old at this point. I think they have like 500,000 MAUs. Not huge by any, it's not bad, but definitely not huge, right, compared to a lot of the other titles in Web 2. But they're doing 650 million annual volume on their marketplace. So 500,000 MAUs, but they're doing, more than 500 million in annual volume. So we're seeing similarities, like you could recreate that. There's more than enough crypto natives to kind of latch on to something like Portals and trade and create items and create these worlds. Like we're already seeing that. So that's one side of things, essentially. Does that make sense? Like that comparison anyway? Like you can have, I think one of the criticisms or one of the skepticisms about doing games, doing things like this with a crypto native audience is like the audience isn't big enough. And I think that's, true to a certain extent. But I think we are seeing there's a handful of titles, a handful of things that really are dialed in on this is what crypto natives are into, whether it's more passive things, whether it's just the trading aspect that pulls them in, but they're kind of doing it within this cool universe. Um, we've definitely seen a lot of growth there. There's still a lot of growth yet to happen on that front.
And also, maybe stepping up back a little bit, why do you think, the Web2 based traditional game players have not been able to launch very successful blockchain based games so far? I mean, I think we've seen some attempts recently, but maybe, based on their, very meaningful, significant presence in Web2 space, the kind of outcome that they've generated is not maybe so satisfactory. What do they get wrong that that doesn't allow them to really go big on the Web3 games?
Yeah, it's very difficult. I mean, I think we've from quite a while back were always pretty skeptical of like where this industry as a whole was going. Anything like whether it was, previously prestigious Web2 studio folks building a game that was for Web3. It's like a lot of times the scope of the games was really high and, high budget. And by the time they figure out crypto natives, if we're building something that's going to appeal to crypto natives, it is a completely different ball game. It is, like I guess one simplification that you kind of see a lot of people in the Web3 game space is like, oh, just make a good game. Like, why can't somebody just make a good game? But I think it's just like such an oversimplification because it's like, okay, so what do you mean by that? Are you making a game that's so good that it's going to kind of break through to Web2 audiences, and that's what we would like to see, and that's the only way that you can kind of make Web3 games work? Because all you're doing really, what it seems is you're already taking an industry that's like extremely difficult to break into. Web2 games it's extremely competitive. It's just very, very, very difficult to make a game that works there. So you're taking that, and I guess your thesis is you're going to be able to make that it's going to be better, or it's going to be supercharged by crypto. But in a lot of ways, it's extra weight, it's extra baggage. Like you kind of have to hide, like with what ended up happening in terms of all the scams in crypto. Your general consumers, like we saw, the games community as a whole very much rejects crypto. So now you just have this big risk of so there's a number of different factors, right? But like that is one of them in that the crypto piece is not helping you if you are trying to release a good game for the the Web2 world. Like hats off to Off the Grid and the folks that like did make something absolutely incredibly amazing and have had the funding and everything else to like also show like, okay, there's a path here. But yeah, it's hard. It's hard to really say like, okay, this is an advantage. This is going to be better. So I think the other element, the crypto broadly, a lot of it is, it's crypto VCs that are not actually there for creating long-term value. They're there to, hey, could this be the next Axie? Could there be a token here? Not understanding the customer, the go-to-market, any of that. It's like, what is the token exit? Maybe you're a Web2 studio and now you have an easier way of fundraising. I'm like, okay, we can maybe do this. And that has obviously not worked. And like crypto broadly has that problem, right? You have a lot of that stuff still happening where a lot of vaporware, a lot of stuff that is just sort of token incentive driven. So there's a lot of reasons, but that's
I mean that's completely true. I think this token is a kind of a two double-edged sword, I guess, because it can be an incentive, but also there's a huge temptation for people to just take a quick profit and then leave, right? So maybe that's not very good for the long-term builders.
It's tough. Yeah, for sure. So,
speaking of that, so I mean, I think also as a Web3 game developer, you're probably considering the token issuance at some point. I'm thinking.
Yeah, yeah.
If that's the case, like, what do you think is the right? Like, what are you thinking in terms of how you could come up with a good token design to incentivize ecosystem growth over the long run?
To have a token that's interesting to traders, and again, this is sort of just an intrinsic issue with the industry as it exists right now, where, we're not at a point where companies are valued, their tokens are valued just on a multiple of revenue, let's say. There's a lot of other factors at play, right? Like liquidity kind of moves to the next flashy thing. And you have to understand that if you're going to be releasing a token and work something out that actually does make sense. I think we've had a long time to kind of think things through and figure out something that would really make sense and be interesting and be realistic about it and say, like, is this a token that I would want to hold, that I would want to accumulate, whenever the next bear hits, and why would I want to do that, right? So, and then looking at the broader crypto trader space and like looking at what is interesting to them. And that's where a lot of the things started clicking into place with like the comparisons to Virtuals and Zora, where it's like, we do have this very powerful creator platform. Virtuals is like a creator platform and Virtuals is also successful in the crypto world because it's an attention center. It's a launch pad. Launchpads will, if interesting things are being created, not to be like too cynical about, the crypto industry. I think there's really cool things that are possible if like you are really taking the time to kind of think through things and, does this make sense? And I think we're finding, that the things that we are doing with this really does make sense, and that we're seeing the attention center mechanics starting to play out with these tokens that people are creating specifically to power their games, and then communities and DAOs are sort of forming around them. Portals is starting to see a lot more attention around that. So when we started putting those pieces together as like, that makes sense, that's a token that I would want to hold, and you get those attention mechanics and so we're just seeing this natural evolution of like these tokens that are launching within Portals that are going to be paired with the base Portals token, which is actually coming up pretty soon. Similar in the way that Virtuals works with that pairing. So like another just cool example of how it sort of naturally evolves. There was that sort of proof of concept first token that spawned a game jam, and I'll hop over to one of those games that was created in the game jam just as another example of like what's possible with the so this is one of the games that was created. So the token within Portals was launched, then it funded a game jam. There was a ton of really cool games that were competing for the prize money, and then there's a DAO that has the Chrono tokens that were in there that can kind of do things. There's a bunch of people that are in the Portals ecosystem that are like, what can we do next for Chrono? And so proposals, I mentioned the X stocks trading floor with fees that are going back to the Chrono DAO. There's other creators that started launching their tokens that also got a bunch of attention, because it's like when you combine the ability for a creator to create a token and create value and have a kind of community form around it and become ambassadors, and there's a lot of power in that when you give them the tools to do cool things with. So besides the creator tools, like we do want to be this like supercharged platform for creators in general. Because like, let's say you're making a game like this, maybe you want to reach a Web 2 audience with your game. Like we've been also building tools that help you with distribution in like cutting clips of your games and posting them to TikTok, like posting them to TikTok daily, so that and sort of giving creators a framework where their games can kind of go viral as well. So really just being this like having that distribution engine, having the creator engine, there's just a lot of power that can come from, both the tokens that are launching within Portals and then, you needing to kind of hold that base Portals token to participate in that economy. So yeah.
I guess kind of wrapping up a bit. So you've been through NFT season, you've been through Metaverse whole thing. What do you think is the next season or next bullish meta is going to be? Do you think it's going to be like internal capital markets or?
I do, yeah, I do. I do think that that's and I'm thankful for that. Like we have always been trying to build things that are like value first, like truly figuring out making something that people want. And I think for a while, there's probably like there's a lot of potential if tokens were valued maybe as a multiple of revenue, there would be a lot more great Web 2, founders that are coming into the space to just like heads down, build something, start iterating, start generating revenue quickly. And you'd see some great things being built and a lot of like, yeah, being able to democratize the ability to, fund those sorts of things and participate in those sorts of things, actually does unlock a ton of value. So yeah, from that standpoint, there's like that's the thing I'm most excited about with the full potential of crypto. And I think Solana is doing a great job sort of leading the charge in that direction. And yeah, that is where we think things are going, and we're excited about it.
Got it. Got it. That's it for today's podcast. Thanks, Gomez, for sharing your journey, and thanks everyone for listening.
No problem. Thanks for having me.